Welcome to the Digital Diary. This is episode number 3, and I am recording episode number 3 today from the comfort of my beautiful bedroom window. I can see the glistening sea. The sun is shining brightly down on me. I actually got a little bit of a red tinge on the cheeks thanks to this beautiful sun trap that I'm sat in. And it just feels like the ripe time to be hitting record and sharing my flow on this beautifully sacred topic around grief. Now, if you're inhumane, then you won't have experienced grief in your life. If you are a human with a living, breathing pulse, with blood surging through the body, a heart pumping, your lungs expanding, your mind that's ticking, like living, breathing human, you will have experienced grief at some point in your life. Now, I believe that grief comes in its own wave of frequency and severity, and it's all dependent on emotional maturity, the severity of the circumstance that evokes this beautiful sacred emotion and experience. But I feel like a lot of addictions multiply and lives can be destroyed by this incredibly potent energy if it's not harnessed and contained in a way that is productive, healing, and the embracing of its omnipresent changing nature, right? I don't think anyone can experience grief and still be the same person. I mean, we're not the same people as we were from the day previous or from waking early this morning. You know, you just have to wake up, feel a bit groggy, and know that by midday that's shifted. So we do shift. We're ever-changing beings, right? Multifaceted, ever-changing. And the only thing that's guaranteed in this 3D reality is change and physical death. And I say physical death as in the meat suit that has an expiry date. But even still, something came to me the other day actually around this where I'm like, well, does it completely die if our bones and our teeth don't disintegrate? Well, I guess if we are put in a furnace and we're burnt to a crisp in terms of physical sense, then yeah, I guess, but still there's an ash sense of that, right? And those ashes get scattered and then they go back into the earth and into the ecosystem of the 3D reality. So does it really die? Or is it just a product of the compostable system that we live in, this beautiful system? Food for thought. But in terms of grief, I know through personal experience how life-changing that grief is. And what I also know to be true is that grief has this beautiful, deep-rooted sacredness within it that I don't believe that everybody deserves to be a witness to. If you've ever tapped into grief when it comes online without numbing it down, without shoving it down, without being too busy to feel into it, you'll feel that it is an incredibly vulnerable, changing, shaking experience. And I know too well about the power of this energy. So what I can consciously remember around this beautiful experience of grief, my first ever experience, was when I was 13 years old and my granddad, he passed away suddenly, and my granddad was like a father figure for me. I was raised by my mama, my nana and my granddad, and I had the beauty of being guided by this incredibly strong, masculine, solid energy. Here one day, gone the next. And he was unwell with cancer for a period of time before this passing. But it came as a shock when he was taken into hospital in Italy while he was on holiday. He'd just retired, worked all his life. He was a Marine. And when he finished the Marines, he was sort of moving around doing all sorts of different handyman work. And yeah, he went on holiday after retiring, and he got really unwell, and he had a heart attack in the operating theatre. Now, when I look back on this experience, I remember my last call with him, and I remember crying my eyes out on the call. I didn't want to admit that I was sad about what was happening. I think I was a bit confused, really. All I remember is just feeling this overwhelming sense of sadness. And I remember him saying, "What is it?" And my cat had ran away the week before this experience, and I used it as that. I blame that. I said, "Oh, Snowy's ran away and she's not come back yet." I guess I was trying to protect him. His emotional state, there's nothing he could do. He was bedbound in a hospital in Italy. How could he nurture and comfort me from afar that way? So I use that as an excuse. And a week after my granddad passed away, my cat passed away as well. And the really funny thing is that they did not get on. My granddad hated cats because they would shit in his garden. And my cat could sense that he hated him. And every time he would come around, and it would always be when he's wearing dark trousers, she was a bright white cat, she would cover his clothes full of white fur. And he would get so annoyed. But what I feel with souls that pass over is that there's always a guide, right? And things don't always make sense in 3D, but in 5D, or the ethereal realm, things do make sense. There's an unconditional flow that moves within the ethereal realm. I believe that there are dark entities and there's also light entities that reside within that space. That's a different topic, but I feel like there was a synchronicity in the passing of these two beautiful souls. That was my first experience of grief, 13 years old, and it changed the trajectory of my life and our family system. And it was a very difficult time for all of us. I was just moving through puberty. I was in my second year of high school. But to give you some reference, my first year of high school, I was a 100% attendance kid, right? I was in the school athletics for high jump, representing the high school. I did really, really well. I fucking loved high jump. Always been a sporty girl. So sports have always been, my ease into. So things were going okay for me in that first year of school. And then his passing that came as a complete shock, for one. And then my cat of 12 years, I think. She was a kitten when I was born, or thereabouts. She was an old girl, so she'd been with me since I can remember. Very, very special cat she was. She would just know. Cats are very intuitive. They're very energy sensitive. And I see that with my cat now, and I see it with the way that she is with my daughter. If my daughter's a little bit unwell, she gets very protective. She comes and sits at the side of the bed. If she is getting uncomfortable, having a nightmare, Dusty is up, straight up. And she was, a beautiful, beautiful companion, actually. So to have two important roles just all of a sudden not be here anymore shook my system beyond what words can describe. But like I said, I was I was a good student, good quote unquote student, and whilst the grief of these experiences shook me in ways that I couldn't even fully describe on this episode, that was my first experience of awakening. Because whilst I was a quote unquote good student, I was doing well, I was in the top sets, all the things, I carried something in my system that needed to be released via that awakening. It's the good girl archetype, right? It needed to be shattered so I could step forth into the isness of womanhood. But it's not the way that I would want my daughter to move. I would want her to be initiated and facilitated, because there's just so much that happens as a teenager, right? Initiation into womanhood is such a neglected thing. And I believe that more teenage girls need to be initiated, and teenage boys. Teenage boys need men to initiate them into manhood, and teenage girls need their women to initiate them into womanhoods. But the teenagers have been demonized, right? Oh, there's just too much of a handful. You're like, have you actually taken a moment to understand what's happening in the physiological, psychological, and spiritual sense of these people, these kids? And they're your offspring. Wild the way society has conditioned parents to demonize and to neglect and to push away their own offspring that is going through their own awakening, right? So I was going through this wild experience of grief, which catapulted me into a deeper awakening. The good girl archetype armor was off. And I remember the first time that this experience helped shape me into the navigation of womanhood with the good girl archetype armor removed. During primary school, myself and my sisters were 3 of about 5 brown-skinned kids. Everyone else is white, everyone else is Caucasian. Biggest primary school on the island, about 300 kids. And there's just those 5 with brown skin. A couple of black kids, Chinese kid, one Chinese kid, and the 3 of us, which were brown skin, mixed Indian. So there was a lot of racial slur and abuse that was thrown at us. But as a kid, I was like, in primary school, I was like, ouch, yeah, that hurt. But I was like, I can brush that off. But come to high school, and a experience of grief that had shaken my system at this ripe age of 13. Things changed when racial slur was hurled at me. I ain't taken no messing at this point, right? That's all I'm going to say. And because I didn't take no messing, it meant that I had gravitated into a field of social respect unintentionally, right? This is just the trajectory of what flowed for me. And when you get thrown into a high school environment, right, it goes without saying, you've got to know how to stand your ground. And I did, without any facilitation. And the words of my granddad would always ring through me. He would always say, if anyone hits you, you hit them back 10 times harder. And I know that type of this like new age parenting of like, if someone hurts you, you run away and you go and tell the teacher. But like, we know that doesn't work. Whilst I'm not all for like violence, I am up for sticking up for myself when it's needed. And my granddad's message just continuously kept being brought forth in this space of self-defense. And I did defend myself over and over for about a year, and then it stopped. But within that year, it meant that I created a strength within my own system, within my name, so that when my younger sister came into the high school environment, no one fucked with her. And if they did, she's not taking no messing either, right? And, we were both moving in this really wild pathway, terrain of teenagehood. And, we had our wild teens, right? You know, grief shook my family in unimaginable ways, including my mum as well. And it's only really taken me this last couple of years to hold deep compassion for her and that experience. You know, that's her dad. That's her dad. But I couldn't see that during that time. All I saw and felt was neglect and push away and being left to my own devices. But I do believe she did the best that she could with the capacity of emotional maturity that she had. So there's a lot to be learned from that as we mature into our adolescence. And it wasn't an easy experience, but I can look back on that and hold reverence for the sacredness of grief. So that was my first experience with grief. And then life went on. And yeah, okay, I'd experienced like a couple of not so pleasant experiences, you know, when I'm ending relationships and things like that. I wouldn't say grief would be at the root of that. There wouldn't have been a grievance. There would have been a releasing, definitely, but I feel like a release from those dynamics and a grievance is very different. And I do believe that relationships are sacred also, and there can be a deep sense of sadness that's felt when these dynamics separate, absolutely. But there is something different about grief. And I feel like grief hits harder depending on how long the experience has been or what that person or animal or experience like meant for you. So as we trundle through the years, the next episode of grief was around a miscarriage. I won't go into the full ins and outs of the experience itself. But at the time, they would do the scans and the screen would be facing inwards, right? So you would see it on the screen straight away. And I remember the scan image showing the image of the baby. And then it came off. And I looked at the woman and I was like, what's happened? And she said, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat there. And that was the second time that I can remember experiencing grief. And I handled it in a different way, to be honest. I didn't really process it. I just went out, drank, partied. A bit similar to the first time with my granddad's experience, actually. Like, that's when I started to, you know, connect with cannabis and drinking and things like that. But what I do know, when experiences like that have been sort of numbed to a degree where there's a capacity to be able to hold it, it always catches back up. Always catches back up. And I know that to be true, and I'm going to explain as we go a bit deeper into this episode. So, you know, I drank and partied and just sort of quote unquote forgot about it, right? That relationship didn't continue. It's going to sound very harsh, but blessing in disguise, based on what I know now and motherhood and the importance of having a supportive, loving, capable partner. You know, too young, not qualified. So that was another experience. And I think like within the last couple of years, I had another experience where my nan, she was placed into a nursing home, and I was actually signed off work for 3 weeks with this one, because my nan has been, you know, like a mother figure for me as well. You know, when things were tricky with my granddad passing over, I moved out of home when I was 16, and she, you know, took me under her wing when I was 17, and she got me on the straight, you know, and I respect that, and I love her so much for that. And I'll always hold that deep gratitude in my heart and my spirit for her, because, you know, I value that. very much that she did. She sorted me out. And it goes to show how we can progress and be shaped by someone's love and support. You know, we are dependent creatures. We can't say that we're not. There's a level of dependence that is healthy, as there is a level of independence that's healthy. But, you know, we can't do all of this alone. I really don't believe that we can. And that's why it's important to have even just a handful of trustworthy, caring people around us. Like, you know, I like that. You've got my back, babes, and I love you, and I'm grateful for you, and I can come to you with the totality of this vulnerability, and I know that I'm not bleeding in front of a shark. I know that this is going to be held and respected and guided. Because even as a grown woman, it's like, I know there's going to be a point in my life where I'm like, that I could potentially need someone's help. Not in a way like that, because I feel like I've got myself to a point where I'm like, you know what, I am good. I'm good, and I know that I've got help around me should I need it. And that's the beautiful thing about dependence, isn't it? And I think that's what healthy dependence is. Because I know if I went and spoke to someone in my support system and had that release around them, like I said, it's like I'm not bleeding in front of a shark. It's not a weapon that's going to be used against me. It's not a form of vulnerability that's going to be taken and twisted and turned for someone else's gains. And I think this is like the most beautiful thing about vulnerability, how sacred that is. And not everybody does deserve to see that and feel that and hold that and help you navigate that. So with my nan, having this experience of being moved out of her home into a nursing home, you know, I just kept like trying to push for alternative care. But at the end of the day, like, power of attorneys are what they are, and their decision is what's final. So it was a very, very difficult process to digest, because I just felt like I wasn't being heard. You know, I just wanted her to have her end of life with dignity. I wanted her to move out. I wanted her to transition with dignity, because as we know, like, we're a product of our environment, and we eventually become the environment that we're in, unless we know who we are and we're sovereign and strong and centered. But even still, and I see that with my nan as she's in this nursing home. She's been in here for a couple of years now, and she certainly was not the person who went in as she is now. You know, she's like that standard dementia patient, where she's just ready. She's being kept alive with pills, and yeah, it's just not. It's not life. I can barely go and see her because it's so heartbreaking to see her like that. You know, very, very beautiful, glamorous woman. And I'm so grateful that I had the facilitation of her guidance as a kid all the way through, you know. So I recognized the pain from that, and I knew I just could not go out into the world. So, you know, I did the thing, and I was like, you know what, I can't go to work. Because every time I would even think about it, I would just burst into tears. So when everyone's saying fuck the system, fuck the government and all that, I'd be very careful with that. Whilst we are, you know, sovereign beings, if that's the trajectory, if we know that in the totality of our being, that we are sovereign, our sovereignty can include the fact that whilst this system, this matrix that we have been programmed into, whilst there's a lot of it that is just fucking bullshit and we know it, there's a lot of it that is actually very helpful. I approached the NHS doctor and said, this is my situation, and I was paid to be at home and to grieve. I'm not saying fuck the system, I'm saying fuck parts of the system that don't work. But that does work, and it worked for me because it meant that I could grieve in peace and in my own time and be paid. which meant that I could show up for my daughter more stable, more grounded. And it was a process. For about 10 days, I would cry every day. And I grieved her. I grieved the woman that she was, and that will never be coming back, right? That's a fucked up thing with dementia. To see it start in its progress, just this like repeating things, more so when she would have a drink, to it deepening in its severity. It's a fucking sad one, and a hard one to digest and to accept. It was hard to accept it. That the Nan that I knew would never be that again, you know. But this is life. And what I learned from that experience was acceptance and surrender into these fucking mad L-turns that life will just present, right? And I also remember part of that process, like a little bit before that, I was also in a transitionary state from like that maiden to mother archetype. Again, there's an initiation that just does not seem to happen these days. I think like baby showers are a aesthetic of the initiation of woman, of maiden into mother. But it's just an aesthetic. There isn't any deep roots in that, and there isn't any deep facilitation that takes place where it's like, okay, things are going to really change for you now. And the woman that you were, the maiden energy, the fuck about find out, the, you know, less contained, mature energy doesn't have a place here. And if it does, you're going to fuck up motherhood. Or you're not going to be mothering as strong as you could be. And as we know, if you've listened to any of my episodes, I am deeply passionate about being a strong role model for my daughter. And I can't be a strong role model for my daughter if I'm not fucking strong, right? And she's seen me in every single facet of my being, that girl, and still loves me. To have that in my life is one of the biggest blessings, right? And the transition between maiden to mother also felt clunky, but I wouldn't say it was a grievance. I would say it was just a bit clunky, right? But I was still in a transitionary period during that process when I was sort of grieving for the loss of my nan. And what I learned about that with my nan is that life's going to always continue, right? And it sounds harsh to say, but life does go on. And she's in my thoughts, my prayers, all the time. I think about her, I work with her energy, I work with her spirit. And what I know about dementia, based on this experience with my nan, is that the soul has already partially left, right? It can't inhabit a body like that, much drugged up and senile. So it does hang by a thread, but it has partially departed. So working with that energy has been very liberating, actually, because it's like, okay, it's very difficult for me to be around her in the 3D, but I do know that this isn't just the only reality that exists. And I know how to work with that energy. Again, a gift that's been bestowed upon me, which, you know, I used to think was a bit of a curse because I was just felt so sensitive to energy, but actually it is a blessing. And the more sober that I get with life and my experience, the easier that it is to tap into that when the call is received. So yeah, that was a few years ago, that experience with grief. And when I say I just let myself just I just melted into the grass. I would just like lay on the grass and just sit in a fetal position in the fucking sun. I'm like, I don't know what my neighbours are going to see when they look out the window, but I actually don't give a fuck because this is my experience. And if I want to lie in the garden in a fetal position with a blanket over my head and cry, I fucking will. Because I know that when I also get to this point of 3D transition, I'm not going to be thinking about what my neighbours think about me or what anyone else thinks about me. I'm going to know that I've got my feet on the ground and I've got my direction sharp and strong, my focus like steady. It can waver with certain experiences, but I know that my eye is on the target, right? And that's the beauty about sobriety, in many different ways, whether it's sobriety in emotions and substance in people. It's been one of the greatest gifts, and this sacred energy of grief has always demonstrated my humanness. And we're living in a world of artificial beauty, intelligence, aesthetics, the shiny object syndrome, this disconnection from body, this disconnection from humanness. We have people that are wanting to have this Kundalini experience. It's like, okay, great, right? But do you know how to actually sit in your human experience? Why are you trying to flee and escape your humanness? It is a fucking gift, and we can't do the thing that we need to do and want to do for our mission if we can't be comfortable in our humanness. There's this big new age spirituality trend. I saw a reel the other day and I was like, oh my God, cringe. And someone's put on this reel where it's like, having a spiritual day. What does that even mean? We're spiritual beings living a fucking human experience. Every day is a spiritual day. I open my window and it's a spiritual experience. I can stroke the fucking cat and it be a spiritual experience. Every day is a spiritual day. But it's also a fucking human day as well, right? And New Age spirituality is another psyop in the bypassing of what it means to be human, right? We're seeing all of this artificial intelligence, this cloning, like women are all looking the same, like there's this new beauty standard that's being set by artificial intelligence. Can anybody see how insane that is? Or has anybody actually noticed it? I noticed it when I saw a AI influencer Instagram account. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, like this is being birthed at the perfect time, because the beauty standards over the last few years have been shaping women to look a certain way, ready for the AI revolution. But what I see is that it's been perfectly orchestrated so that women particularly are just becoming more clone-like. More clone-like. And in no way am I demonizing women to do what the fuck they want, because who am I to say? But what I would say is that we're in 2026, and me personally, I'm more interested in getting my feet on the ground and being in reclamation of sovereignty, not cloning. We see it with cloning in the type of biology through vaccinations. We see it in cloning via quote unquote beauty aesthetics. We see it in the aesthetics of like gym wear, for example, is a big one. But what actually sits beneath that is what I'm interested in. You can look a certain way, but what's the depth of your fucking human experience I'm interested in, right? True beauty is not through aesthetic. It's shiny object, right? It's shiny object. I fully get that. I've seen many men turn heads through aesthetic. And I've seen many men walk away or be scared of the totality of a true sovereign woman's nature. Tremble, babes. And it's a beautiful thing, right? I have also the beauty of being presented with a beautiful man in his sovereignty. And I haven't experienced a man in his sovereignty like that before. And it's a beautiful thing. It's an art. It's an art for a man to be able to hold me in my beauty, not just physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual, and want to learn how to move with me in that. And likewise with him, because there's a depth that I'm only willing to go. Like, I'm putting my toes in no shallow waters. Like, ew. We don't do casual around here. And that's a beautiful thing to know. You know, I can't do shallow. Bored. Who wants shallow? Who wants shallow experiences? And grief will absolutely plummet you into the depth of your psyche and reveal to you your shadow, your weak spots, these beautiful, beautiful weak spots, so that you can learn more about yourself, so that you can stand in sovereignty and you can stand in the face of the people in your life, and they know that you're already anchored, irrespective of what tides turn. They might not know how to hold you straight away. They might still be in a space of learning themselves, you know, if they've never been presented with that before, which I don't think that my man has. But it's about me holding space and reverence and respect for that too, right? So this beautiful art of grief, and I had an experience of recent, which I won't go into, that also sparked grief, like a wave of grief through me, a loss. And it wasn't an easy experience, but it was an experience that allowed me to witness my humanness, sacred, and to really hold the container of my experience. And there's an integration piece that comes with that, right? Because we get to witness our shadow in the real time. You know, we hear this like shadow word, dark night of the soul. It's just ego death, babes. It's just ego death. Losing grip of control and a deep surrender into what it means to be human. Fucking beautiful. Power. Absolute power. And I heard a saying of recent as well, which I'm just in so much resonance with. Like, I've never been scared of the depth of my experience. Never. Never. Feel a lot, hold a lot, move a lot, know how to navigate it and contain it through discipline and a beautiful lifestyle and sobriety, which means that when these waves of grief do present, because I think that's just part of life, isn't it? I know that I've got my 2 feet on the ground and I can feel what it means to withstand a storm, a beautiful storm, a clearing, a release, a stepping forth into another shaping of womanhood. And it's for me to navigate, you know, it's for me to navigate. Yeah, I've got people around me and I'm so grateful for that. But sometimes for me, what is best for me is to contract and to sit in the isness of the roots going down to hell. Sounds gnarly, right? But how can we reach high up into heaven if we don't know our roots into hell? It was that saying that I heard recently. I'm like, fuck me, that's so wild. So resonant. How can we? We can only reach above to the heights of how much we can dig deep below. As above, so below. Like, we can't just do one without the other. And if you're just reaching above, it's an aesthetic. Unless you learn to dig nice and deep down. And our menses, babes, girls, whilst that's not grief, we get to experience every fucking month the totality of our emotional experience. Use it as an opportunity to dig those roots down into hell, babes. Feel the fire. Feel what it means to be a woman. Woman, womb holder. It's power. Gatekeepers, portals to fucking life. Know your power. If you don't know that and you're not willing to put those roots deep down into the earth, every time an opportunity presents, whether it's grief, whether it's your menses, whether it's something that evokes something sharp and strong, you just bypass it and, you know, having a spiritual day, like, kind of thing with it. Like, you're only going to get so far. There's only a treading that comes from that. We want to be swimming in the depths, right? There's so much to explore. And unless we're willing to face what it means to explore the depth of our darkness, which has been demonized, right? No one wants to face the shadow. People are scared of the dark. One can't exist without the other. But the more that you know yourself, the more that you know what your triggers are. Like, where does your mind and your energy feel like it wants to gravitate to in the darkness? What's the quick fix that the system that's been programmed would make you want to do? Mine used to be smoke weed, but I've been sober for the last 5 months, and I moved through this recent experience without it. I was like, nope, I'm going in, baby. And I went in and I met parts of myself that were very vulnerable and scared and needing a light of awareness to be shone upon. I'm trying to fix it. I'm not trying to bypass it with positive mantras. Again, New Age spirituality, be careful. Be careful. Because there is a psyop behind this. Liberation. Free soul. Free spirit. No, we're not doing that. Why would we want to give our soul and our spirit away? It comes with a fucking price, babes. And you decide what the price is. Containment. Not everybody deserves it. Not everybody deserves your sacredness. It's sacred. But there is a level of vulnerability that people do deserve to hear and receive and witness. But me personally, I don't get into a habit of revealing my sacredness too soon. I let it flow out in accordance with its level of safety to be witnessed. Like I said, we don't want to be bleeding out in front of sharks. Discernment, it's a powerful thing. And yeah, I decided to take today off work because this beautiful integration that I'm feeling right now needs to be seen, to be held, to sit in the sun, to soak it in, because it's here for me. I know that for sure. 36 years young, I've experienced life. I'm not saying that I know it all. What I am saying is that when we reach down into hell, we can reach high up into heaven too. Think of that root system like a tree, right? We don't need to be afraid of our shadow and what it presents. I feel like a lot of what is hiding in the shadows is just a little kid in a fetal position just wanting to be picked up and like, you're okay. You're fucking normal. Even though you don't feel like it. You are. And if you have a child, use this as a reference point. If a child falls over and hurts themselves, or, you know, if something's pissed them off, they are saying it. That's what I feel like the little child needs: space to be held, especially if you're like a 90s kid, different parenting styles. My child is having a human experience where she's sad or upset, and it's taking me time to get to this point. I'm like, you have that release, you know? Even though it's been immensely triggering and I've been like, I can't cope with this anymore, it's taken me time to be like, okay, I'm just going to hold you here. But then I know when there comes a point where I'm like, you can have that experience, but it's time to tidy up now, okay? Stand strong, shoulders back, head up, tears away. Everything's going to be all right. So yeah, I'm going to sign this one out now. And if anyone's listening to this, anyone wants to drop a comment or drop me a DM, Lee Wildflower personal account on Instagram, Move.Flow.Glow _ on Instagram also. Yeah, let's connect. And know that grief holds a place in this human experience. Have a good day.